Hello, and welcome to another interview for the Free Your Spirit Summit. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to Dr. Sweta. Welcome, Dr. Sweta.
Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited and honored to be here.
Absolutely. So let me just tell the viewers a little bit about you. So Dr. Sweta, after 17 years in the profession of pharmacy, she took a leap of faith and left a decade-long career as a professor and left a decade-long career as a professor and took a deep dive into her soul and came out as a writer / creative and a life coach. Her mission is to support ambitious, loyal, over-responsible, others-focused women in finally taking that leap and creating the space to focus on themselves and create harmony in their lives from the inside out. So people love her unique, spiritually grounded approach of giving permission to want it all on your terms without having to do it all alone. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I know that so many women can benefit from this conversation of really understanding how much that energy of giving can sometimes turn into this sort of like energy depleting sort of behavior that then doesn't really help anyone. And so that's why I was so excited to bring you on and to get into this. So to start off, really, one of the things that you talk about is living authentically in our daily lives. So let's start there. Tell me a little bit more about what it means to live authentically.
Okay, so authenticity or, living authentically is kind of like a hot word right now. And, I think that there's a lot of depth to living authentically. And to me personally, it means to really honor your true nature. Mm-hmm. And there's so many of us in this world that actually don't really know who we are on a core level. And sometimes it's like you never knew who you were or you lost yourself at some point. Like a lot of mothers lose themselves when they become a mom, for example. And we also change. We go through different phases in life. And we oftentimes don't honor, who we were. And we carry on those, desires and longings and beliefs into the life that we have, which is in a different phase. Like, so for example, before you get married and who you are as a partner, or, as a mom, as I mentioned, or even as a professional, for example, and to be able to take that time to say, well, what's important to me now? What are my desires? What are my values? What's driving me? To really understand, what is the choices and the goals that I'm making for myself? What motivates that? And it could be something so simple as my outfit. What am I wearing today? This was a conscious curation. It wasn't like, I'm going to throw this on because it looks good on screen and I want to impress. Of course, I want you guys to think I look good, but really it came from within, and it was very gold, where, honoring my lineage and honoring my uniqueness by wearing these different bindis. It was all conscious, even my background, the way I set up, the colors, the figurines I put there. And I took time to really say, okay, what do I want to project? What do I want to bring forth in this exchange? And to me, that's what authenticity really means, is taking the time to listen and to make choices and decisions that come from who you really are, not outside noise.
So do you feel like what happens for a lot of women is they lose connection with that authentic self because they're afraid of basically being, I find, I'm just thinking about different clients who, are putting everyone else in front of themselves, or moms who, are always worried about taking care of their kids or their spouse and or their career. And I'm just curious to hear your perspective on why we don't really allow ourselves to live authentically.
So I think it's multiple reasons. I think that oftentimes we are really conditioned by our upraising, our culture, the environment we live in, the messages on media. But I also think there's a big influence in our lives that a lot of people don't talk about. And I really think it's that we inherit patterns from our lineage. And so, we could have observed the way that our mother was, or aunts in our family. And I'm specifically talking about women here. And we make this decision in our mind, and it's not often conscious, which is, I'm not going to be like her, or I want to be who my mom is. I saw who she was and I want to mirror her. Or there's sometimes certain qualities where we say, we're loyal to the certain patterns, and other ones we're rebellious towards it. And we don't realize that we're operating from this place of reacting in kind of like a defense mode or protection, and not really honoring, well, what is it that we want to create? Who do we want to be? So like I have clients too. I have, one friend who became a stay-at-home mom, and she, loved the way she was mothered. Her mom was present with her. She did arts and crafts with her. And so when her kids were born, she just imagined that she wanted to create the same experience, and her kids are not receptive to it. Mm. So she's, and she's frustrated with that. And my sense is that, when you're just recreating the past as opposed to being present to what is, which means not only honoring what you want, but like who your children are, for example, or who your partner is, not a projection of who you think they are or want them to be, then you end up in this place of feeling like disconnected or burnout or depleted, which is a really important word when we're talking about this conversation.
Yeah. One of the things that you say is that a woman is the heart of the family. And when her heart is hurting, it affects the pulse of the family. I think that a lot of times women think that they need to be that martyr in order to take care of their kids well, or do, perform in the ways that they think a good mother does. And so can you talk a little bit about like the effects of what happens when a woman isn't taking care of herself and how that affects the dynamic of the family, but then also what happens when she does take care of herself in all of these ways and live authentically?
Absolutely. Excuse me. I think that we all have certain energies and gifts that we bring to any container or home. So that could be the physical home, that could be your job, that could be your business, that could be your community, it could be anything. And in general, when I talk about, feminine and masculine energy, which I think we'll get into more deeply, to me, it's an energy. It's not being a man, it's not being a woman. But I do want to say that women inherently have more feminine energy. It's just natural for us. And to me, a lot of that has to do with creating kind of the flow in the home. And we, just like we are the matriarchs. And if you just relate it to something, like Mother Nature, when Mother Nature is not treated properly, when she's not watered, when she's not given enough food, when she's not given enough sustenance, when she's not respected, when her needs are not respected, she goes into depletion. Mm-hmm. And eventually what happens is that you're just stepped on and stepped on and stepped on and stepped on. And then you hit this breaking point of just fury and rage. And we're seeing that happen just on a collective level with Mother Nature, with everything that's going on. And it's, to me, the same exact thing in a woman's life. Mm-hmm. If she is not nurtured, if she's not served, if she's not supported, it's the home. It's but the container, and so it's a ripple effect of whatever you're a part of, whether, again, that's your home or an organization, so to me, every woman is a mother, whether you choose to have a child or not. You are a mother because you have been given the gift to create, mm-hmm. and the gift to hold. And those are really, really important, necessary, life-sustaining qualities that we don't talk about. We just don't talk about. And we need to have that conversation. And so, like, for example, how that looks in my family, my mom was this amazing woman. We're from India, and she was really smart and really intelligent. She wanted to go to become a doctor, and she couldn't, because in that time, in that age, it was, my family believed in arranged marriages. Mm-hmm. And so she had to get an arranged marriage to my father, put her career on hold. And then we immigrated to America, and my mom's a strong woman. So she's like, well, I'm going to do like what I can, so she went out and got a job, and it was a factory job because she tried to get a job in her profession as a chemist, and she couldn't, it was really hard. And so she did what she could, but the effects of that, of not being able to express herself in her dream and her passion, rippled down to me so strongly. It affected me greatly because I saw her unhappiness. I felt it. And, we feel each other, whether you're intuitive or not. I mean, everybody feels everyone. And
especially
because
little kids too, right?
Absolutely. Definitely. Absolutely. Little kids. And I ended up becoming a doctor of pharmacy because I was carrying out her dream. And I didn't even know it. Like, I had no idea. It was so ingrained. It was very subconscious. And it wasn't until I became a mother and I had my own awakening that I was like, oh my God, I never wanted to be a pharmacist. This is nuts. And so that's when I started to there's something in it. And then I started to see that pattern in other clients. And I said, this is a thing. Like, women not being nurtured, not being expressed, not living to their full potential. It's affecting it affects, almost everything she touches.
Yeah. So when you talk about nature, I think of a flower, and when a flower isn't watered and when it isn't taken care of, and there's a quote about this where it says, you don't blame the flower, you blame the soil. And it's really about, when you are nurtured and you are watered and you are able to express yourself authentically, you can bloom. But if you're not, you shrivel up and you don't express seeds. You don't have your creativity go out into the world. And I think a lot of women experience that, and in similar ways to what you were saying, whereas we do certain things to fill certain roles that, subconsciously or not, other people have sort of helped us go in that path because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And so I'm curious, if a woman is in a place where she knows she's gone down a path that is just not a fit for her, what are some of the steps, or what did you do to start getting yourself back onto your path of alignment or your authentic self?
That's a great question. First I just want to talk about some signs to let you know that you're off your path, because it's initially subtle. And when you don't listen to it, it gets louder. And then if you don't listen to it, it's like a big whack on the head.
2x4.
Yeah. And there's a saying that says, you have to hit your rock bottom to change. And that it definitely is a catalyst for change. But one of my missions is to support, to bring out the message that it doesn't have to get that bad, and so some signs that you might be off path. And, if this is going to sound so funny, but it's, if you find yourself snapping at people, whether it's your partner or whether it's your boss or whether it's your child, you find yourself just getting irritated, really quickly. That's a sign that there's something happening internally that's not in alignment and it's not being addressed. That's a small example. And then, a little bit of a louder whisper would be that you find yourself drained and having no energy, and you're getting headaches, and your body is essentially becoming the boundary for you, because there's something that's not right, that you're maybe saying yes to too many things, or you're saying yes to something that's not, that doesn't feel good for you. And you maybe you're not aware of it, or you don't have the courage to speak it. So your body will start to be the boundary. And then there's the, real 2x4, what happened to me, which was I ended up giving birth prematurely. My son almost died in my womb. And it was a divine mistake that saved his life. And he was born less than 3 pounds. He was 2 pounds, 9 ounces when he was born. And that was a huge wake up call. And so it could show up as a disease, or, huge financial loss, something kind of traumatic that happens. And that's really, I believe, because I believe your soul and the universe or God, whatever feels right to you, is always in your favor, but you have choice and you have free will. And if you're scared, or you don't have the awareness or the support to make different choices, these catastrophic things make the choice for you.
Yeah. And I think that it really boils down to, I think that we forget that we're not doing it alone. I was just talking about this on a call with a client today, and I asked her, I was like, do you believe in miracles? And not from this religious perspective, but from this this like connection to something more than ourselves. I think that we get caught up in thinking we're responsible for all of this stuff. And I know that's something that you talk about as well, is like, well, I want to make these changes, but I'm responsible for all of these things. So I can't do this because I need to do these things. When in reality, the longer you ignore this thing, the worse off that you're creating, you know, your physical body and everything else in your life is being sort of like sucked, like cut off, because you're not really living in alignment. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, considering the group of women that we're talking, I know these are like amazing, really efficient, you know, they can really handle a lot. They can take on a lot. They're talented. And so one of the patterns that I have seen is that oftentimes women, I'm going to say like us, because I'm in that boat too, is that there was a crack in the foundation of the way we were raised. And that could mean that you were raised by parents that were not available. Like they were depleted, you know, like I told you my story, and, you know, I'm an immigrant. My parents were immigrants. That's common. You know, oftentimes we hear, and this is something also, like you could have had parents that were alcoholics or abusive, you know, and so we know that that's like a crack in the foundation. But something that's not talked about and that's more subtle is like emotional availability. If your parents were working too much, you know, or if there was a parent that was sick, like a mother that was sick, those types of things basically elevated children, you know, children like us to go into hyper functioning really early on. And my sense is that, you know, like a lot of these kids were celebrated for that. Right? Like, oh, look, you know, she's so responsible. Like she got straight A's. She doesn't create any problems. She takes care of herself. She cooks. She can cook for herself by the age of 7. You know, these things that are like, yeah, they're great, but you're not supposed to be cooking for yourself at the age of 7. You're supposed to be playing and enjoying yourself. And so it's this feeling of like never really being able to be a child and not knowing, not having that feeling of being supported and nurtured. And so if you don't know that that's available to you because it wasn't available to you from your own parents, it's really hard to lean on that. You know, and so you know, you were saying like, what are the steps of if you get to that place of burnout and you just really can't take it anymore, is, you know, and this might be a big jump, but it's just opening up to the idea that you are not alone. You know, that there is something bigger out there. I personally like to call it the divine mother and the divine father, because that just helps me, you know, because I really think this is a process of reparenting yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and so, God.
I was going to say, I agree. And I find that really common too, of this idea of like having to take on responsibility at a really young age and sort of carrying the weight of a lot of other people, because for some reason it was either how you stayed hidden or safe, you know, or you feel like it's your job to take care of everyone else so that then you receive the attention or the, you know, you feel worthy or whatever. I think you're right. Like the awareness of that is such an important step, just becoming aware that I don't have to do it all alone just because I always have.
Yes.
Tried to.
Yeah, it's just a habit, essentially. And so my mantra is, just because I can doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, you know, just quickly, like, you know, there's a flip side to it also, is that when you are always the responsible one and thinking about everyone else, you actually disempower other people from stepping up and living their potential. And so, you know, this is kind of the gateway that I use, because, you know, I work with a lot of mothers, and it's very hard for them to go from being for other people their whole life to saying like, well, I'm going to do for myself now. So the gateway, which was for me, was, oh, if I keep doing this, I'm eventually going to disempower and hurt my child.
Yeah.
And no mother wants that. That kind of helped me to say like, okay, I'm going to make these changes, if not for me, at least because I don't want my kid to go through what I went through. It was, that's what helped me. And then eventually it was like, well, I got to do it for me too. You know, so, but that's just a way to kind of think of it as far as like entry point
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, putting yourself first.
Yeah, because it makes it very real. It's easy to ignore ourselves or our own emotions or inner guidance. But when it comes to our children or the people that we love the most, we want to take care of them. So it's like, it is like this switch where you're like, okay, well, if you don't focus on fixing this or, you know, healing this, then you're probably going to be the role model of the opposite of what you want for your children. And so that's where it becomes that much more real.
Exactly.
So when it comes to this of like the action, because I think, you know, a lot of times we'll tell ourselves, so responsibility is one part of it. And then the other part is like, so what do I do? I'm not supposed to take any action, or I'm not supposed to, you know, I'm just supposed to like sit around. And I think that's where talking about the masculine and feminine energy balance and how we can utilize both in different times or circumstances in our life is so important to understand. So can you go into that a little bit? What does the masculine feminine energy balance mean, and what does it look like in terms of this healing?
Okay. Can I first start off by talking a little bit about the qualities of the feminine and the masculine, and also what they look like when they're in the shadow?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that a lot of us, we all have masculine, feminine energy, and a lot of us are operating from the shadow of those qualities. And so for the feminine, for example, you know, the feminine is it's a receiving energy. It's a soft energy, but it's also a fierce energy as well. And we're talking about, you know, Mother Nature. And just to kind of really give this perspective, you know, you're talking about like not doing anything. So let's talk about like growing a child. You know, and if you think of, again, this is available to every woman, you know, despite kind of like whether you choose to have a child or if you can have a child or not, you are born with the ability to grow a child inside of you.
Yeah.
And you know, of course it takes some action to get there. But once the child's in you, like, you're not really doing anything but taking care of yourself, eating well, getting enough exercise, getting rest. And if you know, the baby grows just naturally. And so this is like an innate quality of the feminine.
Yeah.
But it has really been twisted. And the way the shadow feminine shows up is manipulation. So, you know, like, the feminine is really powerful. And I think she knows that. Like, if you have that feminine, you know that. But when you're not like using it in co-creation with something bigger, and then it gets manipulated. So for example, you cry to get what you want, or you yell, or you know, it's so subtle. Like, I can give you a small example from my own life, and I'm conscious of this, but it's so in me, is that, you know, my husband and I have certain nights out, and I wanted to switch with him. And instead of like saying to him, like, my body hurts, I want to go to restorative yoga tonight, I created this whole like plan of like, or this whole kind of story, like, hey, are you going out with the guys tonight? Because then if not, can we switch? Like, I just wasn't being direct.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to manipulate circumstances so that I'm giving him what I think he wants, so that I can get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pure manipulation, you know, and instead of just being direct and being able to believe that he actually wants me to feel good.
Yeah. Which is so important. Like, that's such an important point, because I think a lot of times we don't even think about that. Like, of course our family wants us to feel good because they want that quality time with us. They want the quality version of ourselves. But we use things like you said, like manipulation, or we think that we have to like position it so that they're happy or they're getting their needs met in order for us to get what we want. But that's not, it's not the key is really conscious communication.
Right. And that's because that's how we operated when we were children, because we didn't have the skill sets. We didn't have the words. We didn't have the communication. So it was like we took care of our parents, or we got good grades, or we studied something so that we could make them happy, because essentially we want our loved ones to be happy.
Yeah.
It's really a beautiful thing. We're just kind of going about it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And so just adopting the belief of like, the man I married, or the woman I married, or the people that are around me actually want me to be happy. And if I'm not getting their support, it's not because they don't love me. It's maybe because of the way that I'm approaching it. And instead of choosing manipulation is again, to be direct. And then the shadow masculine, one of the common ways is that when you don't get what you want, our masculine turns into like force and aggression.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to take it. And then it's like, poof, and there's this attack, and it either happens internally. Some, women shut down and they take it out on themselves and on their body, and others, they yell and scream, at their kids or at their partner. And that aggression is the shadow masculine. And the healthy version of that masculine is assertiveness, which is the direct communication and asking for what you want. And so, if you've not seen this, it's not, on a global scale, on a societal scale, like we don't have models for that. You watch reality TV show, it's all about this, and if that's what we're constantly seeing, to cultivate kind of this new way is challenging, so I'm grateful we're talking about it because it starts planting the seed. And
yeah, I was going to say, well, in either case, it sounds like the solution is consciously communicating and showing up by, being available, the assertive part of the masculine, but also the receiving part of the feminine, to have that back and forth flow of a conversation versus like, here's what I need, or manipulation, or whatever it is, from a very forceful, like, I'm going to get what I want,
right,
that kind of a place.
Right. And it's also about space versus forcing, and
Yeah.
so like, just using nature as a metaphor again, you plant a seed in a pot, you want to grow a rose. It doesn't grow overnight. You water it and you nurture it. And then one day this beautiful rose blooms. And that's exactly how we operate as women, but we live in a society of constant harvest, like constant production. And this goes because we are operating in a shadow masculine patriarchy.
Yeah. It is so common, right? Like that's what we see on social media, on TV, everywhere.
Right. So it takes courage for a woman to say, you know what, like, I'm going to honor my own true nature of being a woman. This is how I create a baby. This is how I'm going to create the other things in my life. Whether my goal is to be, a CEO, or to, whatever your goal is, it's to say, like, I'm going to take the time to plant the seed and nurture it and give space instead of forcing creation, because it's actually not natural to who we are. And even in conversation, like, I know that if I get into something with my husband, I like want it resolved right away, because I want to know we're good. Like, I want to trust that we're good. And if he's kind of like needs time to process, and I'm not feeling okay because I'm not getting that love, like, I'll push it.
Yeah.
And, I did this kind of process once. I don't know if you know Danielle Laporte's desire map. But she, it's just these kind of like questions, like you ask these questions and you don't give your mind time to think. And it's actually one of the processes I use with my clients. And it's always so surprising, like what comes out when you don't give your time, you don't think about it. And one of the questions was I'm generous when, and my answer is when I give space, and I'm thinking generosity has to do with giving money, because like, I think women in general, we are like that. We want to serve and we want to give to our community. But that's another form of depletion.
Yeah.
Because space allows for things to happen naturally, and so that you don't have to deplete yourself. And then it goes back to trusting. And so, when you were talking about how does the feminine, the masculine, marry each other so that they're, they're really into service. It's in service of what wants to be created. Is the way that I think of it is, the masculine is the foundation. It really creates kind of that structure. To me, the masculine energy is all about structure. And the feminine is kind of like this wild, flowy, beautiful, vast expression. But if it's not rooted, if it doesn't have a foundation, it floats away.
Yeah.
and nothing gets physically manifested. And so like I see this a lot with very spiritual women, you know, they meditate a lot and they're kind of in the ethers, but then there's no physical manifestation of what wants to be created. On the flip side, if you're really in your masculine energy, you're accomplishing a ton, but you're burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not emotionally balanced. And so if we take the time to actually create some structure in our life, investing time to create a foundation. And so what that looks like is, you know, for example, in my relationship, one thing we do is we have quarterly meetings. Like my husband and I have quarterly meetings and we have a structure to what this meeting is going to look like. And you know, this is what we're going to address, et cetera. And then we have a system of, we each get to share and what we're feeling, and no response except for, I repeat back what you say to me.
Mm. Yeah. So then you feel heard.
So then you feel heard. Exactly. And that creates trust. And that creates a foundation so that we could do all the exciting things that we want to do in our life. And you can do that in a relationship. You could do that on a personal level as well. And so that first step, you know, when you were asking about like, you're in this space of like, I'm not aligned, what do I do? Is to give yourself the space to just be honest, like just to be honest. And if you don't have the ability to do that, find some friends that you honor the way that they're living, and say, you know, that I have something's bubbling up inside of me and I don't know what it is. And I think I'm afraid to share it. I'm afraid to admit it. Can we meet? Can I have this place? Can you support me to be able to just say the truth? And if you don't have that, because I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of women don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have a lot of friends, you can have a lot of, you know, family members, but I'm talking about safe container where you can actually be honest and speak your truth. I don't want to be a mother. I don't want to get married. I mean, something that may feel really deeply shameful to admit. Then you know, you hire a coach, work with somebody that is skilled at being able to hold space, because that is the essential important part of having a foundation is, and this is the masculine to me, is having a safe container.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so, and I think too, like going back to the masculine and feminine balance, like we operate from that place of the shadow when we are so depleted. And so it's almost like giving yourself that permission to just speak your truth, you know, and to bring that shadow to light to people who will support you. And I think that's a really important point. I think what you're saying about sharing it with people who you trust at that level, and, you know, maybe it's not your spouse, because it might trigger you to go into that mode of like, you know, I need you to do something different, versus you just making it about you and saying like, here's how I feel. You know, you might need to start with friends, but it's so important to express that, to get it out, so you're not just stuffing that emotion away. So it's almost like what you're saying is like the action step isn't necessarily like, here's the things that you need to do, set up your structure in terms of self-care and all of this stuff. It's really just like shining the light on those dark places that you've been not paying any attention to, and expressing them so that you can free yourself from, like, instead of them just bottling up inside of you.
Absolutely. You know, one thing that I often see is that a lot of women, and just people in general, have these like ideas in their head. Like if I make enough money, if I get thin enough, if we get a house, like I will feel better, and that will solve whatever I'm feeling inside. And, you know, I'm just going to give you like, for everyone listening, just a simple question to think about. Have you ever achieved something you wanted, and then the feeling of joy and happiness like withered away? Like, have you ever wondered, like, why am I not more happy? Or why did this go away so quickly? And I remember, you know, for me, like, I had a lot of achievements. I had a lot of awards, a lot of certificates, a lot of degrees. And every time it's like, oh, when I become this, like, I'll feel good. And it was like, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah,
It's
always.
it's kind of like, you know, just going for the next high. And, you know, the problem is that achievement is socially acceptable. But it's the same thing as having a drug addiction. You're going for the next high, and it's not sustainable. So taking the time to really actually go within, and it's simple, and we have been taught to believe that simple cannot be profound, but speaking your truth is the most powerful thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
It releases a cascade of next steps, because that's the other thing that I hear a lot of women say is like, I don't know what's my next step. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And the minute you just drop in, like, get quiet, give yourself permission to be honest, it's like the next steps unfold, and oftentimes effortlessly and miraculously, and it comes to you.
Yeah, we've really created space by expressing and getting all of this stuff out that we've just been hanging on to and carrying around with us. It creates that space for then everything to flow in.
Yeah. And, and initially it might be like a big thing, or it just feels big, like, so for me, admitting that I didn't want to be a pharmacist was huge. Like, it was huge. It was an identity crisis. My whole identity was in this, being a doctor, being a professor. And, oftentimes I say that the breaking point for me was giving birth to my son prematurely. But actually, it was when I went back to work 6 months later after maternity leave. I applied for a promotion. And I had applied for a promotion earlier, like 4 years in. I wasn't quite ready for it, so I wasn't deeply disappointed. But I worked my butt off, for those years. And I was getting like awards and all these things. So I thought I was a shoo-in, and I didn't get promoted. And I just remember like crying and breaking down in the dean's office, and just being like, I work so hard, I don't get it. And what I didn't know then was that was the biggest gift. The universe was trying to show me that this was not my path way back in college. Way back in college. I like got a 69 on an exam, and I had to like retake the whole series of exams. And it was like the universe was kind of showing me like, this is not your path. But I was too stubborn. I didn't want to, I was manipulating because I was too afraid to speak my truth. And growing up in a conservative Indian home, like, we don't live on college. We don't live away. I wanted freedom. I wanted to get out of the house. And in my mind, a 6-year doctorate program was my permission slip to leave the house. Not so much because of my parents, but I mean, it's just like my culture.
Yeah. And
so I was manipulating my way instead of being direct and saying, this is what I wanted. And it was a hard lesson.
We sometimes manipulate other people, but we also manipulate ourselves into believing things that just aren't true, because that's what's familiar. That's what we're told we're supposed to do, and all these different things. So it's almost like realizing we manipulate our own selves is such a huge thing too, right? Like,
absolutely. It has, again, ripples, and this goes back to like realizing how powerful you are, and not to be afraid of that power, because I think that that's a huge reason why women don't own their truth, is because they know how powerful they are. I think society knows how powerful women are. And it's one of the reasons why, media is set up, the industry is set up to pit women against each other, because part of the feminine is actually collaboration and thinking of the community. And it's not a hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's actually like we come together and we're like puzzle pieces, and we each have a gift to bring in that creates like greatness in the world. Like this telesummit, like this is exactly what you did. You curated women that have a specific gift. This is being in your feminine.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of women in this industry maybe not want to do that. In fact, when I became a coach, I was working with this company and I did a telesummit, and the company said, we need to talk about it. And I said, what? And they said, you are interviewing other coaches. And I said, yeah. And they said, don't you see that this is taking like business away from you? And I was like, what? I was so shocked because the coaching company was based on the pillar of integrity.
Mm.
And I said, wait a minute. And they were calling to, like, I was scared. I thought I did something wrong. So it was really interesting. And it was in that moment, I was like, wait a minute. They were calling to see if like I was right for them. But I'm like, I don't think you're right for me, because I just want people to be served.
Yeah.
And I was like, you mean to tell me like Tony Robbins calls me tomorrow, I can't work with him? They were like, no. And I was like, that's insane. I was like, there's enough to go around.
Right. Yeah.
There's enough to go around, and people are going to resonate with who they resonate with. And I was like, I fired them.
Good for you for following that, because I feel like those are the types of defining moments where we get to step into our truth, or we get to line up with somebody else's. And I feel the same way. Like, there's no competition. There is enough, that each person and each coach or whatever it is that you're talking about, there's always like the right fit at the right time and all these things. And so my goal is just to help everybody in whatever capacity they need at the current moment. So why not, right? Like, join.
That's being in your feminine. That's being in your feminine, And so I think that women know this, and once they, and I think they feel the betrayal of themselves and of, the lost potential of what they're meant to bring into the world, by allowing this belief system that we are not powerful. I recently heard someone say, men have been taught from a young age to believe in themselves and that they can do anything, and women have been taught to doubt themselves from a young age, to shame on their bodies, to not talk too much, not to be too loud, not to be too bossy,
not too much.
And this is, again, what we resist most is what we fear. And I really think it's this feminine power that, and, I have some insights into like how that started. I think that's kind of beyond the scope of this, but I think it's just, it was operated. The feminine was used in manipulation for so long. And it was this, I believe that there was a manipulation of women's powers, like spiritual powers specifically. And that ended up creating this sense of men not being enough, and so it's this game of like power over power over power. But
it created a game of men not being enough.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so I personally believe, and this is something that came to me when I took a pilgrimage to Mary Magdalene's cave in the south of France. And if you look at her, I mean, she is the epitome of making a change, of how she showed up in the world. She went from being this prostitute, to this amazing teacher. She is the one that announced, Jesus's like resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And so if she can change, like we can make that change internally. I think that we have felt like collectively, but I think many of us women have collectively felt that misuse of power ourselves, so there's a lot of talk about like the burning of the witches. But I also think that there's this internal like knowingness, and this goes back to like our ancestors and our lineage of abused power. And that's where the fear is coming from. And I believe that when the choice that we as women make to say, I'm going to do this differently, not only ripple our family and our communities here, but we actually ripple 7 generations behind and 7 generations ahead of us.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's really powerful. And again, it doesn't have to be really big. Like me choosing to marry who I married, I met my husband while traveling to Peru. I did a trip for myself. So this is a perfect example of feminine energy. Yeah. I didn't go there looking for a man. I went there because I wanted, freedom is very important to me. And I was always like, stifled growing up. So the minute I got money, the minute I had my freedom, I was like, I'm out of here. And I went to Peru. I was on that trip. And in fact, I was in a phase of looking to date non-marriage material men because I had just broken up an engagement, and it was like huge, like, drama.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I gotta, so to me, a guy who doesn't speak English that lives thousands of miles away in another continent is really non-marriage material.
Yeah.
But we ended up falling in love. I married him, and we have a beautiful son. And that's just like a perfect example of, I did something for myself, and it came to what I wanted. What my soul definitely wanted love. Came to me, and I didn't have to effort. And by making the choice to say yes, I'm going to go for it, because I had a lot of resistance. What is my family going to say? And then just logistically, like, how are we going to support each other? How is he going to come to, like, all of that stuff? But when I got quiet, and I said, my cousin asked me a question, and she said, is this fear or is this doubt? And I said, this is fear, because between him and I feel I've never felt more myself.
Yeah, it's like the operating in that fear-based mode always clouds our thinking, and it gets us to just not make decisions based on what our heart is telling us. We get stuck up in our head, and it usually thinking in our head, it's almost like we're operating by all of the feedback that we receive from everyone else. So it's like you have to clear away the fear so you can get into your heart, so you can actually do the stuff that is right for you versus what you think you're supposed to do because that's what everybody else says. It's such a good point. It really is.
Yeah. And that's the stuff that's supported. That's the stuff that's supported. So the thing is that if you feel alone, it's because you've been operating in a space of control and manipulation, and not giving yourself the space to honor your heart's calling. Because I really believe that a desire of the heart is a desire of God, of, the universe. And that will be supported. That is alignment.
That's the connection to your higher power, right? Like that's the connection to something greater than yourself, to miracles, to whatever you want to call them.
Exactly. And so it's so crazy, because by making that choice of doing something for myself, I got what I wanted, but I evolved my lineage because I married who I wanted to.
Yeah.
And my mom couldn't. She was forced to marry who she had to marry. And I got to marry whoever I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that little choice, that was, it was a scary choice, but it's the ripples. And I just really want to emphasize, this is not unique to me. This is not unique to me. When it takes courage to say that I'm actually going to serve my family, I'm going to serve the world by doing what I want to do.
Yeah. Following that guidance. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds crazy, because we do live in a world of doing what I want, instant gratification a lot, but that's not the doing what I want I'm talking about. Not the ego stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that's like, it's a pull, those heart tugs.
Yes. I love that. Saying like the pull energy versus the push energy. Yeah. So important. Oh my gosh. This conversation is just it just makes so much sense. I know a lot of women are going to resonate with this whole idea of the masculine and the feminine, listening to our heart and really doing what's best for us so that we can serve as that example for everyone that we love. And so I just really want to honor you today for being a part of this summit. Thank you so much, Dr. Sweta. And we were going back and forth on, I wanted to make sure I pronounced it correctly. And then I just want to give people a way to connect with you. And we have a free gift for them as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this conversation means so much to me. And I feel really honored to have this space and have this platform, your platform, to be able to share it. And I actually, do you mind if I share a quick story of how we connected? Because I think that's a perfect example of feminine energy. So I don't know how I got onto Sheila's Instagram, but I saw her posts and I was like, oh my God, we have the same message. But she says everything I say in 2 words. And which is cool, because that's where that uniqueness comes into, right? So it's not like a comparison. It's just like, we're in alignment, and that's awesome the way she does it. I'm verbose. And then she posted on Instagram that she was doing this telesummit, and I felt called to reach out. She was saying that, you were saying that, like, a lot of people think you're crazy to do this in less than 90 days, but you're like, whatever, I'm just going to do it. And so I just wrote her, an instant message, and I was like, I think it's so cool that you're doing that and that you're listening. And I said, like, our messages are so in alignment. And then you responded with, like, I never do this, but I'm following my intuition. Would you like to be part of it?
Mm-hmm.
And it was effortless.
Yeah,
You know, it was, and so that's a perfect example of feminine energy. And so it was important for me to create, I didn't want to just give any free gift. Like, I really wanted to be conscious about what could I offer these women, because the way you described your audience also is like who I want to serve, or who I feel called to serve to the T. And so I put together a compilation of 3 interviews that I had done in a telesummit with some amazing women. Nancy Levin, she's a Hay House author and best-selling, wrote a best-selling book. Jessica Ortner of the Tapping Solution, she's also a best-selling author, and the tapping is an amazing tool, because I also wanted to give some real tangible tools to help with the fear of feeling those kind of negative emotions or your truth. And then the third one is an interview with Jean Slater, who has this amazing tool to help you connect to your higher consciousness. So I know that I learned by example really well. And so these women have amazing stories. And I think the more and more we hear of other women that are living like this and that are doing this, and even if they're not, real, like your real friends, they will be. You're connecting to that energy.
Yes,
and then you'll start to draw in women and or support of the right people to help you. And then the other thing that I created was this, 6 effective, quick tools to help you stop the spiral of negativity. So it's bringing positivity into a pinch. It's easy. Like, you could just print it out. It's a PDF. I use these tools all the time, every day. They're fun. They're easy. They're quick. But this will help you to start create a new habit. So if your habit is, I'm going to be loyal to a pattern that either I inherited or that I learned from it, and it doesn't serve you, these tools will help you to, be the driver and say, like, no, this is how I want to operate in my life.
So that those will help you to implement everything that you heard today in the interview. So it's so perfect. Awesome. So there's a button below the video. You can click on that, and then you'll get access to all of those amazing goodies in the interviews. And I have something even more special to offer you guys if you have signed up for the All Access Pass. I know some of you have, but if you haven't already, you might want to consider this, because Dr. Sweta has an amazing, very special deal for everyone who signs up for the All Access Pass. So I'll let you go ahead and explain that as well.
Sure. So, the new year is coming up, and this is like that season of like, what are my goals for the year? What are my, New Year's resolutions? And how many times have you set a New Year's resolution to say, like, you want to lose 20 pounds or whatever, and it doesn't happen, and then you feel like a failure, And so in this conversation of the feminine, I really believe more in soul goals, which is really taking the time and space to listen in, and not only, think about like those external goals, but what does your soul want? And this is called free your spirit. So like, what is your spirit wanting to express through you? And really being able to honor that by taking the space to do an oracle reading with me. So there's this amazing deck of the 13 Moons Mystery School, which is a divine feminine mystery school. I don't have a lot of decks. I only have 2, and they were both given to me. But I have to tell you, this deck is so powerful. Oftentimes I'll ask a question and then I'll ask it again, and the same card will come up more than once. I mean, and it's happened. I do rituals with my husband around our anniversary, and the same card, it's amazing. And so what I would like to offer you is an oracle reading to really just get a sense of like, what is 2018 asking of you? What is your soul? What is your heart? Because one of the things that I am very skilled at is because I know that it's not easy for people to tune into their heart. And I get that. I've learned how to do it for myself. But what's also come up is that it's a gift of being able to hold that space for women to really trust and let go and be honest and speak through their heart. And then that's the feminine, and then the masculine part of it is to take these ideas, these concepts, these energies, and to really create a practical, action-oriented plan through my coaching and guidance so that you can really bring that out into your physical daily life. the goals that are being asked of you. And so normally this is something be $188. So I'm giving a $44 discount for everybody who buys the all access pass. And again, this is like a simple, fun thing to do, but it is so powerful. Just in my own story of 2017, everything that has manifested. And when I did this ritual in the beginning of the year, it was like 3 pictures. And I didn't know what it meant, but one was an apple, which now I know is teaching. And here I am teaching.
Yeah.
The other one was wild hair. I don't care. And I've come back into fashion, which is something that I loved, which was one of my expressions in high school that I totally, and then the other one was a pencil. And I ended up writing, I'm part of an anthology of a book that's going to be published next year about my story with my mother. And these were not ego goals. I didn't know what any of this meant at the beginning of the year. It just all unfolded through this practice, this ritual. So I'm happy. Cool. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be powerful.
So neat. Yeah. And I think sometimes having that guidance, doing something like that, like a reading or using a deck to receive wisdom, can be so helpful to have a coach there by your side to help you not only understand what it means, but then also implement, like you said. So that's all in a package for you guys, for anyone who signs up for the all access pass, which there's a button below. You can grab that right now as well. And it's $144. Amazing deal. I just, the value of what all of these different things that Dr. Sweta has offered here today is just so great. And so if it resonates with you, if it's calling to you, follow that wisdom, follow that guidance, and just take that next step into really tuning into what your heart is calling you to do. The stuff that you maybe in the past have been like, oh no, that's not right, or this isn't the right time. You need to act on that stuff when you feel it. That's how we step into this balanced masculine, feminine, and really, being authentic on a daily basis. Yeah. So again, Dr. Sweta, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being a part of the summit.
It was so much fun. It was such an honor. And I'm just really excited that you're creating this platform of bringing this conversation out. So thank you so much for doing your part.
Yes. And so for everyone else, I will see you on the next interview. Take care, everyone.